Hello and welcome to this video on model-driven apps. In this video, we are going to focus on how we can create a model-driven app from the scratch. One of the challenges that when you start as as a consultant or as a beginner for Dynamics is where do we start off from? What do we do? I want to create a model-driven app, but what exactly should I create? So for those users, my recommendation is to just start off with one of the existing model-driven apps provided from Microsoft and try to replicate it. See if you can make it all over again. And that's what we're going to do in this exercise as well. We're going to pick Customer Service Hub. This is the model-driven app. Before we start with configuring a model-driven app, what is important is to ensure that you're working in the right environment from here and you've opened the right solution. So I'm working currently in this environment and in this solution. When you know that you're in the right environment and in the right solution, then you start off by creating a new component. You click on app and you say model-driven app. And that's when it prompts you for a name. So I'll say customer service app advanced. We're just going to give it any name. And this is going to be one of the easiest exercise that you've ever done because configuring a model-driven app just requires drag and drop. So my recommendation is also to have your own environment and do the same exercise all over again yourselves to get that confidence. It is super important that you get hands-on because without hands-on you will not know you will you will not know where it may go wrong. So I see that I have an app, so I can here add a new page. I can say I want to include a database table in there, and I want to say I want to start with accounts. And I say add, and that's what it did. So when I go on my left side, it shows that there are sub areas where I have accounts, and I still need to add things. So here I can say I can add more table. I can say I can add contacts here, table, and the name of the table is contact. Sorry, because okay. Before we start with any of those exercises, the moment when you initiated an app, what you see is that exactly how you see Customer Service Hub in the same layout, something has already been given to you. So this is very different than Canvas app because in model-driven app, there is already a structure and a UI defined for you, and you just need to add in the relevant tables you need to. So what it does is when you initiate a new app, it will expose you all the current tables and different forms and views that you have that you can include in this app. So that's basically scoping it. It allows you to make some segregation, some UI related customizations, but that's only limited to creating your own groups and some areas like it's shown over here. Okay, so I'll start off first with group. When I click on group, I have the option to rename it. So if we were to give it exactly the same behavior, I would name it customers. And now you see that's also reflected here. And here I will say I want to add here contacts. What you see is when you add every time a sub area, it allows you to select a content type. So you can add a table here, and when you select table, it will expose you all the Dataverse tables that are allowed to be selected. So I can select accounts, contact cases, but also records and tables from different modules. So right now I'm building an app from customer service, but I'm selecting account and contact, and which are core records or overlapping records across different modules like sales, marketing, and customer service. So this allows you to have a very seamless experience in terms of navigating the table and working with tables as well. So here I have accounts, and before we start blindly adding everything, maybe it's also important to see why are we doing this. Basically, what you're doing is when you initiated and created a new app, something like this, you are creating an app for a group of users. So let's say we call them customer service agents. You're creating an app for agents who are going to be working with this app. So the next logical step for you to is we have created an app and now we're going to add the things that these agents need. And what are these agents? These agents are going to work with accounts and contacts. So basically your customers. So they need to know who the customers are within the system. So to have a look at Coffee Lab ABJ or Fourth Coffee or Graphic Design Institute, these are all my customers as an agent. I have actually a lot of customers, so when I click on active accounts, I can also see that there are more customers as well. But this information that needs to be there for them to know who is the customer and what kind of cases we have had before for them, and a lot of other things, phone number, address, etc. So these are some very important information. And in the sub area, you can also add in a similar way more records. So right now I've selected, when you click on this sub area, as I mentioned, you have option to add table, dashboards, web resource, URL, and custom page. These three I'm going to get to later, and probably we're not going to touch these in or these two in this course, but we'll create a separate video for that one. And then what I will do is I will also add contact, and when I do that, save. I can also give it a nice name. I can say contacts and save. So what you see now is within a few seconds, you have an app ready and you have added a few relevant records that your customer agents will be working on every day with. So they can click on organization wide, all the contacts, all the active contacts that are in the system or accounts. Okay, then we see what are the other things that we can add. And then we move on towards our more process-oriented entities, which are specific to customer service. And that's why we'll create a new group, and that new group will be called service. We call it service. And in this service section, we can add new sub area. Let's say sub area, and the sub area will be a table. Why? Because I can see it here, cases and queues. I can add cases. Yes, I can add more sub areas just like that. It's a table and it's a queue, not a queue, but a queue item. And we will see that why. When you click here, you see it's not actually queue, but it's a queue item, just like how you have it here. I just know this because I'm working on it. But if you want to know about it, just if you want to replicate the exact items of an app, just open the app and then you will see the configuration, what's sitting behind this. When you click on the sub area of any app, you will be able to see these details yourselves as well. So I've added these as well. Now, if I look at this, it requires me to add more information like insights. So I'll create a new group and we'll call it insights. Before I move into the insights part, I want to talk a little bit about the core records. So now you also have allowed your agents to be able to create new case or work on existing new cases. You have showed them how to work with queue items. And if you're not familiar with queue items, then please watch my other video on customer service. But in terms of the powerfulness, what I mean to say is that how quickly you can create an app, how quickly you can start adding UI items on the app, which also have meaning towards them. So when you click on accounts or when you click on cases, you actually show to your agents all the cases that exist within the database, or how I want to say, all the cases that exist within your organization. It's tomato. One is more technical and one is more functional. And in the same way, you can continue to improve the UI by adding more useful things for them. So insights, why it's important, because insights is one of your ways to give access to very powerful dashboards offered from Microsoft as well. So I can quickly also add that in the insights. How do we get there? Again, this is a matter of knowledge because I have opened the app before. You can also do this yourself and you will know what it is. I'll select table, although it's a dashboard, but I know customer service historical analytics. That's what it's called. And when I do that, you can see how the Power BI dashboard loads now. In the same way, I can add one more sub area. It will also be a top table and it will be about knowledge analytics. You see how quickly we can start configuring and adding things, and the customer assets. And customer asset is something that's, and this is again the part where I talk about how this model-driven app spans across the whole stack of Dataverse. So all the tables, because what we are going to add now as customer assets and IoT alerts, these are some records that are also overlapping in a different module of Dynamics, and that's called field service. So I'm going to add um, customer assets, and we'll add what? Correct, a group, and the name of the group will be customer assets. And here then I will begin to add sub areas, and the sub areas are going to be table, and I will say customer asset. That's where we are. And then I will add, one more sub area, and I will call it table, and then I will say, and this one is going to be IoT alerts. Okay, very good. And now we are at the final part of adding one more group, and that's going to be regarding templates. And sub area is going to be a table, email, template, add, and then one more sub area, table, email, signature. Okay, so you see how easily the model-driven app that was offered from Microsoft, how easily you can make it yourself as well without having to do a lot of customization or a lot of development. You can basically do the same things in your own way. And then you save and publish it, because for you to cascade your changes across the system, what's important is that you also save and publish your changes. And then if you want to be test this app as well, you wait for the publish to commence or complete, and then you click on play. And when you click on play, although you have the option to hit test here as well, you see your app is ready to use. So you can now go ahead and just create contacts, accounts, or have a look at the existing ones as well. However, if you would like to do more extensive testing, but not just in your browser, but also on different platforms, one of the cool things of this portal is that it also allows you to change the platform and see how it would be. So for desktop, it's like this. But if you want to test it for tablets, this is how the view is going to be. You can also click on actual record to see how tablet renders record information, or what we call it as forms. And then we have the phone view, which is also quite cool. So you can also see what's here. You can see your navigation all the way here, and you can close it. Then you can choose to open a different record. So this is basically how you can also do some testing directly on the portal itself without having to install this on different devices, and yeah, just do it yourself. There are also some other things that are important to know. For example, I'm going to change this back to the start. And when you click on navigation bar, you also have option to show, for example, if I can show home or not. You see how that behavior changes here. So I'm going to zoom this in a little bit more. So if I uncheck this, then the home goes away. If I uncheck this, recent goes away. If I uncheck this, pin goes away. If I enable collapsible groups, then it allows you to also see them like this. If you enable areas, then you also see how you can have additional options. For example, so here I have area. I can call it service, but I can also, add one more area, and we can call it service management. And when we save it, it's also there. And then within this, we can add a group, and then within that, we can add a sub area, and we can call it a table and a queue. I'm going a bit fast because you've seen so much that it doesn't make sense to keep it very slow. But you see how the behavior changes. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And you see we have a new section now, just like how we have in over here in Customer Service Hub. So in your navigation bar, make sure that you have checked the right boxes to be able to see different options. One of the important things is when you enable an area, you cannot disable it anymore. So you will always have it. Although you can delete it, then it goes away, but this is just a setting. Once enabled, cannot be disabled. I will remove the enable collapsible group because then it's more clear for me to see what are the things that are added. And then here I can also call my group the way it is here. And I can say these are my case settings. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to go and build the whole app. There should also be some things that should be for homework. In this case, this is your homework that you can go and start adding these things. And if you encounter any other things, you can add that as a comment. I will treat that as a bug and I will see if I can answer your questions. Okay. So we also saw how navigation settings work. We saw how we can have it tested across different platforms and for responsiveness. There are a few other things that's good to know as well, and those are your settings. Because on your settings, you get generic apps related settings. You can also try to change an icon from here by choosing a different web resource. What a web resource is just for you to create a new web resource in the form of an image or an icon, which you can then use here. So when I click here, it shows me all the existing images that are available. Microsoft has chosen this one, but you can choose any of the ones that are existing here, and yeah, and continue with that. You also have advanced settings as well, where you can include a welcome page. You can also choose how you would want your app to render on a mobile, because there are three different versions of how it can look like. So my preferred one is the Power Apps Mobile, but you can have a look and see how this works for you. Other things are also, there are some other features you can enable and disable. I'm not getting into this because then it becomes an advanced session, but one of the important settings that I can recommend you is to enable in-app notifications if you would like to send notifications to your agents. And especially I think for customer service, this can be a handy tool because customer service agents require a lot of collaboration, a lot of reminders, a lot of follow-ups, and a lot of notifications. Then you have the upcoming, which allows you to see the upcoming features as well. Okay, that is everything that I want to talk to you about customizing apps. There are last few remarks that I want to say. In your app, you see all the entities that are added. So entities are also referred to as tables, or tables are referred to as entities. But in your environment, you can have a lot more tables. So it's always possible for you to also include tables within your app without having to add them in your navigation. All you need to do is just add them in your app, and then you're done. In terms of automation, you also see that for now all the business processes are enabled. You don't have to enable all of them. You can also disable all of them, and then keep adding them one by one. So for example, especially that I'm customizing the customer service form, it makes sense to have this process flow added to the app. It just makes your app a bit more light and a bit more manageable. And now we'll have a look on how we can basically also limit some other things. So far, we created an app. We added all the necessary tables within the app. We had a pretty nice session on how we can organize that and put them in groups. But let's see, are there more things we can do? And what are those things? When you go on pages, you basically see a list of all the tables that are added to it, and which also allows you to select all the relevant forms that are allowed. What are forms? Forms are just a representation of a record. A record will have a lot of columns such as account name, phone, fax, and this is how they are represented on a form. So I can switch between if I different forms from this to this by clicking here. So when I want to create a new account, I can have a preferred form. Normally, in an app, it makes sense to have one default form enabled. If need be, you can have more than one as well. But especially if you have different roles, probably you can also tie forms to different user roles so that an agent with less privileges sees lesser options, while someone with higher access or someone with different roles and reasons may use something else. In this case, we see account, but you can also have sales insights, and it's probably for someone who's more in the sales department to see what are some nice insights that we can have on account. But it is always possible to limit the number of forms that you have for every table. So in accounts, again, this is how like it works for business process. For account, you can turn it off and then only one. And now you can manually add more than one forms. For example, you can add this one, and then they are added to your app. And then they are also limited to these apps. I think it makes more sense to make sure that you only add the ones that are actually needed by users. Otherwise, if you end up adding forms that are also related to some other departments, then it's not nice. Considering account is one of those sensitive entities or tables that are used across different departments, so you can have a dedicated form for marketing, for sales, for service, and you would only want to include the forms that are related to service in the service app. Just like forms, you can also include the number of views that you want to have in the app. So right now it's everything, but I can just limit it to the ones that I need. So in that case, I can just account right follow and done. And then I'm done with my change. I can save and I can publish it. And that is everything that you need to know about model-driven apps. And I hope it was informative for you all. If you have any other question that you would like to post, please post it on the comments so that I can have a look at it. If you have special requests, also put them in the comments so that I can attend to them. In the meantime,